Hey everyone, it's Elliott, and welcome back to the channel. So one of the fun and more challenging things about music is that whether you've been playing for 1 year or 2 decades, sometimes you can feel like you have a pretty good grasp of what you're trying to accomplish or what you've done. And then one thing can appear someday and all of a sudden you go, do I even know anything? That happened this past weekend. I was recording acoustic guitars for a friend of mine, Mickey Blue. She's been on the channel before. You might remember her. A while ago, she was like, hey, check out these CLA plugins, Chris Lord Algae plugins. He's been on YouTube before, whatever. I gave him a shot. They sounded really good. So I put the plugins on the acoustic that I recorded for her, and it achieved something that I've been wanting to achieve for a long time, which is to get a reasonably bright sound without any of those harsh peaks. Generally, if I'm playing something and I'm like, I add just like a little bit more bite to some note, and I'm trying to basically kind of do something like Stevie Ray Vaughan. When he would play even a quiet song, he would get real quiet and then loud and then quiet and then loud. Except when he was playing, maybe live, maybe it would jolt you back a little bit, but on the recordings, it doesn't have the same like hair erasing feature. So that would happen all the time. I would sound nice, I'd dial myself in on my speakers or on my headphones or whatever. I'd be like, oh, that sounds good, great. And then on my phone especially, I would listen back, and if I hit a note extra hard, it would kind of pop out through my phone. It was pretty frustrating, and I've always wanted to learn how to work around that. So I wanted to figure out what about these plugins was making it so good, I guess. It's just a series of faders, and it's like an EQ, a compressor, etc. And so I had to look up what kind of compressor and whatever, and I wanted to recreate it in my Fractal. One of the big things I found out, despite reading through so many different Fractal manuals and Fractal forum posts and about whatever, is a really interesting thing about where you put the compressor. If you've downloaded any of my presets, you'll notice that the compressor is often in the beginning, because I still kind of think of everything as a pedal board, and on my old pedal board, the compressor was close to the front. I also always put the EQ after the amp and cab. What I found out is putting the compressor first before the EQ like that has a nice clear sound, a bit brighter, but putting the compressor after the EQ really warms it up. Let me play 2 examples for you. So here's the compressor first. And mind you, other than the compression that happens when you upload something from YouTube, there's no post-production or whatever on my guitar. So what you're hearing is just the Fractal, and then eventually the compression from uploading to YouTube. So again, here's the compressor first. And here's the compressor after. And then there was the second feeling of, oh, I should have been doing that the whole time, which is using the look ahead time on the compressor. Not all the compressors in the Fractal have that, but I use the JFET and optical, and those both do. So here's with no look ahead time, but the compressor after the EQ. And here's with the look ahead time at 2 milliseconds. So you'll notice I'm using my bridge pickup because it's the brightest thing. I'm hitting those notes pretty hard, but with the look ahead time and the compressor after the EQ, it's actually kind of warming up. Even though it's still retaining a bright sound, there's less of those really intense peaks. If I turn my tone knob down from 10 to 7.5 or something, it's still a bridge pickup, but it's going to be quite a bit warmer. This is especially nice for me on the neck because I always liked dialing in that's kind of maybe warm but a little bright, I guess. Not some super jazz tone with the tone all the way off or whatever, but still warm whatever tone. And every time I would record, I'd be like, dang, there's still that thing where it peaks, but without the compressor in the beginning, with the compressor after the EQ, with this look ahead time on. gets right where I want it to be. I've also always had the issue of like my clean tone in the Fractal being maybe quite a bit more dynamic than basically everything. As soon as I even put like a medium drive on, like, it's a pretty stable sound. When I put a lot of gain on, it's a very like, it's always going to be around here maybe. But when it's just a clean tone and just like a clean amp, no pedals in front of it or whatever, even with what I thought was a good amount of compression, it was still like very, very, very dynamic, which is fun and cool, but it also will leave room for those spikes. So I started using way more compression than my instinct told me to, and it actually got me right in the ballpark of those plugins. It also got me where I wanted to go with the cleans, because now it's a bit easier to make sure that the volume is consistent between all the scenes, between all the tones. So I'm pretty excited about this new preset and this new way to go about making them. And if you have a Fractal and want to try it out, link to download is in the description. I'll show you how it also works with the tele, which can be, as we all know, pretty bright. So here's the same preset and everything, but just with the tele. And here's one with a bit more ambiance or ambience. So again, feel free to try this preset out if you have a Fractal. Link is in the description. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.